you mind telling us what happened with your brother?
So, overdose. I guess not technically an overdose. I think basically the story I got was that him and his friends were, trying some pills and whatever, which is crazy to me because the rural area I grew up in, that stuff wasn't around when we were kids. But I mean, had it been around, maybe I could have been in that exact same situation. And he basically strangled on his own vomit.
So just to clarify, he wasn't exactly addicted or anything like that. It was a one night type thing.
Yeah, it was like a fun night gone wrong kind of thing.
that adds a whole nother layer to it.
Yeah.
So how do you respond to that? What was it like before leading up to the fight in that first week hearing the news?
Well, I mean, it was like you're getting ready for a fight. Everything, your whole life is revolving around, preparing for a fight. I woke up, I think it was a Friday, directly before, the Friday before I was going to weigh in. So a week and a day before the fight, I get a phone call from my brother and he's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Nothing. What's up? I'm about to go to the gym." He goes, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm at home." He says, "Will you sit down somewhere?" And immediately I'm like, "What's going on?" So I sit down on the couch. I was like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Dude, Jake's dead." And I'm like, how do you process that? I'm having my morning coffee. I'm in my underwear in my living room. Yeah, I felt my brother and I kind of did the same things. This was also so much alike. We were both trying to hold it together. And, 6 months goes by and, I'm telling him about my day. And he's like, "Dude, I'm not doing good. I'm really not doing good. I'm really struggling with all this." And I'm like, "Dude, me too." And I haven't said this to anyone. And I've been trying to put on this face, but I'm like, "Dude, every time I feel like someone tells a joke and I laugh and I'm happy for an instant, I'm like, you can't be happy." You know what I mean? Like all this stuff just happened, your brother's dead. Like you can't enjoy this. And I felt that way for probably honestly, like maybe like a year, maybe a little bit longer, where I was like, I'm really trying to get back in the swing of things and really, after I felt like I really dealt with it in my own way, that stuff just doesn't go away. You know what I mean? Everyone's like, "Well, it's been a year, it's been 2 years." It doesn't those things don't go away. There's still things that I do that I think about him. Every time I'm going to sign a fight, I think about him. You know what I mean? There's still so many things that I just wish that he was a part of. Every time I do something or I go somewhere, I go on a trip or I go hunting or anything, I think about him and I'm like, man, I wish I could do this with him. And, that never goes away. I guess the sting of all of it definitely lessens over time, but it doesn't really go away. I just don't think, when something like that happens, it changes you, whether you want it to or not. Like I don't know what kind of person could be the same, after losing someone that they, really, really loved and cared about.
I don't think anyone could be the same. And again, whoever the person changes, because it's going to change you forever, it does end up, in my opinion, up to us on which way we want to change.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, those experiences you're saying, how it, it never goes away. I completely agree with that. Do you notice it evolving? Like maybe like when the first couple of years, it's been 4 or 5 years right now, right?
Yeah. It's been some time. Yeah, I think it's more or less, it doesn't sting the same way it did. But just having this conversation about it, it's not something that, I really, really talk, I talked a lot with my sister, but it was more, for her than it was for me. Like, it's not something that I am to this day, like really comfortable talking about, and I don't ever really want to be comfortable, having a conversation about that unless it's specifically to where someone else is like in pain, grieving, dealing with something, and just being completely honest and just telling them like, I know the main thing is that you have to still like be joyous and still live your life regardless of how it happened. Like no matter what that looks like, no matter if that means, you recognize that, life is short and you switch your whole life around and you chase your dreams, after, you worked a dead end job or whatever it is. I just think it's important that you come back to some form of baseline in your everyday thoughts, instead of just spiraling and spiraling and spiraling, and also, facing that sooner than later.
And what is facing it to you?
Being alone, not distracting myself, truly thinking about it, recognizing that this happened. This is going to drastically change and alter the course of my life in every way, that I will never physically see him again, in this lifetime, and like accepting that. And I don't want to say moving on, but continuing to live my life the way I was living it before. But, even though all these things happened, I still have dreams I need to chase for myself. I still have all these things, even though there's this, this looming dark cloud. And that was what it was for me. It was I really stopped distracting myself. I immediately wanted another fight so I could feel the nothing that I felt before, that last fight.
I don't align myself with any one specific thing. I kind of have my own thoughts, if you will, and pull from many different things. But literally today I was writing something and I somehow came across, I think it was and if any Bible people like yourself, I'm misquoting anything, correct me, but I think it was like Genesis 11. It was something, I think it was the Tower of Babel. And there was something I was looking that up and referencing because I was talking about, we're just contemplating suffering in the world and challenges and anything that may come across. And it doesn't seem like the Bible in Genesis references suffering specifically, but the interpretations I was reading was that God or the Lord changed the language of the men that were around that building, that tower, because otherwise they wouldn't have any challenges. I don't have the exact quote. This is paraphrasing and interpretation, but my take from it was that according to the Bible in this Genesis chapter 11, he created this dismemberment of these peoples to make it more challenging, because without having these challenges, it would be too easy and they wouldn't even be able to find joy or something of the sort. But what I'm pulling from that is if there was a reason, a spiritual reason, because remember earlier you said something along the lines of there's no why to anything, that why something like this would happen. I don't know what I believe. I don't have the answer. It's just all speculation. I would hope there'd be a reason, even though in this meat suit that we're in, it'd be like, obviously there's no fucking reason for something terrible like what happened to your brother or my dad in 9/11. How could there be a why for that? But then I read that in the Bible, and this wasn't as violent or catastrophic, and I may be completely misinterpreting, but it seemed like he put these challenges in the way for us in order to find spiritual advancement and to enlighten. So that is a very, maybe a weak, loose attachment to everyday things that happen in our life. But I just wonder if there is spiritual reason that we just can't comprehend in this painful, emotional marble of a rock that we are as humans, that maybe there's got to be something. And it also doesn't have to be. I don't know. Maybe there's nothing. But it's like I do maybe ignorantly sometimes latch on to this idea like maybe there is a why. And maybe we'll never find out. Maybe we don't have to find out. But maybe that's part of the journey we're on.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like when something horrible happens, that trying to explain it doesn't make sense, but like trying to figure out like how that's going to change you and figuring out like who you are after something like that happens. I think the Bible's kind of full of stories like that. I actually just read the Old Testament, which is a wild, wild book. But there's a lot of talks of suffering and, kind of what suffering creates in people, and how suffering creates character in people. And like really to only show someone's true character, like they have to suffer. And I think a lot of times and this might be kind of anti, Christian or kind of how people view the Bible today, but like, let's face it, like there is documented things in the Bible that shows God, putting the Jews in tribulation and making them figure it out to build them to be stronger. And like if we're gonna like define, why do all these horrible acts, why do kids die of cancer, why do all these horrible things happen? Is it the only why that makes any sense to me is so that we appreciate our life, You know what I mean? And ultimately, I think about, and I talked to an exercise psychologist about this, and he had his whole thing was focused around like gratitude and presence, like pure presence. Like when you're working out, be working out. Don't be thinking about the bills you have to pay, your trouble in your relationship. Don't think about any of those things. Like be present, be mindful, in every moment of your life, just because you're so much better when you're truly focused on something. And when you appreciate, when you look at everything that's happening as an opportunity, when you wake up in the morning, and I know Christians that really, really struggle, and I know some that put all their faith in God, and the ones that struggle, I don't really want to say they're happier or less happier. The ones that put all their faith in God, I don't want to say they're less happy, they're more successful. Or I really look at, like, I just know people that have nothing and they're truly grateful for their health and they're truly grateful for all these things. And even though like the whole world can be falling apart, but they're just like grateful, and you can feel it on them. You can see it by the way they speak. I know people that have everything and that have no gratitude for anything, and I can just tell that they're miserable, So I really, if I read the Bible and I got one thing from it, it's that, suffering should teach us to appreciate the good times, and like life without suffering doesn't make a lot of sense. You know what I mean? Like that's what makes life beautiful. It's the hard times.